we're to believe what Mr. Shaukat Aziz has to tell us, things have never been better for Pakistan. Moody's and S&P have upgraded us, debt is down, investment is up, and GDP has grown. But is this the true picture? What about the increased incidences of violence, killings, sectarian violence, and lawlessness? With me today to discuss this and other important issues that impact us are Ms. Simi Kamal, CEO of Rasta Development Consultants, Mr. Nayyar Hasnain, who's the additional IG of Police, and Ms. Nuchi Karia, who's a freelance writer and consultant from New York. Simi, Nayyar, Nuchi, welcome to 24/7. Now, Nayyar, we've had some interesting things happen recently. Mr. Asif Ali Zardari, who has been our favorite political prisoner or whatever for a substantial period of time, is now out. But he has demanded that the Chief Minister of Sindh resign simply because the Chief Minister made a statement saying that Mr. Zardari would not be safe. And he said if anything happens to him, then the Chief Minister will have to take the rap. So, as we said, this remark is, is a direct consequence of what the Chief Minister had said earlier, that Zardari is not safe. So, and this prompted a lot of speculation as to his personal safety, whether he would need his own personal safety detail, and whether he would move to Punjab. So what is the police doing about this? I mean, where do you fit in?
You have made a couple of statements, 2, 3 in fact. You talked about the violence, you talked about sectarian violence, you talked about the killings, you talked about Mr. Zardari's release, you talked about his safety. So you've all number of things that you have raised. I think it will be better if I respond to them one by one.
No, let's go first to Mr. Zardari, because if Mr. Zardari is not safe, then what about the rest of us? We're just ordinary citizens, and he's this terribly important person. And if the Chief Minister of the province is saying that he is not safe, then I'm really concerned about getting out of the studio tonight.
No, I think that's not the true picture. Mr. Zardari is safe in the sense that, or unsafe in the sense that he has got his own political foes. He's been involved in a murder case, so there is always a possibility of a backlash against that. But as far as the security is concerned from the government's point of view, I think, or from the general perspective, if you talk about the general security element in the province, I think the security at the moment, or the incidence of crime at the moment, is pretty low, as we can talk about it, about the sectarian killings, you have raised issues and other things. But let's talk first, confine ourselves to the political aspect of it. The statement made by Mr. Zardari about his security, or the issue raised by him, is a totally political issue, I think, and it has got nothing to do, or at least it is perceived that it has got nothing to do with the real facts on the ground. To start with, I think he has got his own set of people around him to guard him, and then the government also provides general security, and I don't think he's got any threat other than the threat that he may be trying to raise because of for the political reasons rather than for any other reason.
So you think there's a lot of hoo-ha so that he gets political mileage out of it?
I think so.
But what about the general situation in Sindh? See, you travel a lot in Sindh, and you're always in Tharparkar and the interior and things. What do you think? I mean, one hears about incidences of violence, etc., especially towards women.
Well, having been traveling in all over Pakistan for the past 20 years, there are some parts which are certainly safer than others, and you'll be amazed to hear which ones they are. Tharparkar, for example, is a place where I feel really safe. Fantastic. Even though it is a place which has a religious mix of 50% Hindus and 50% Muslims, and you would expect there to be many more sectarian or religious-based terrorism, or what is called terrorism these days. But surprisingly, in places like Mithi and Islam Court, nobody locks their doors. I have been there. The doors of the guest house or rest houses where we stay are never locked, and people felt even safer until the army arrived. And once the army has got its outpost there is now a growing sense of insecurity. Now that is really interesting, why that should be so. Also, if you ask in terms of how people feel, particularly in rural Sindh, how do they feel in terms of their personal security, I think it really the responses really range from being very afraid, from being not afraid at all. There are some traditional ways in which the so-called dacoits of Sindh work. Now they have been pointed out very often as being a force to be reckoned with, and interestingly they don't attack women or children. I've been out sometimes even at night, where I've been the only woman traveling in with a group of government people or NGO people, and sometimes I've been told, well, this stretch of land is not very safe, and I said, well, why have you got me here? And they say, oh no, because you're with us, nothing's going to happen, because the traditional dacoits will never attack women or children. So there is that part of how lawlessness has been accepted, that particular kind of lawlessness, that is dacoits, and how they operate. Then there is fear of the law enforcement agencies also, and what part they play. But most of all, I think because there is an interplay of formal and customary laws that have given rise or to the increasing power of jirgas and non-legal or illegal systems of dispensing justice, which have nothing to do with our system of courts. What that means is that many people are settling disputes and meting out so-called punishment for so-called crimes which may not be considered crimes under our legal definitions, but are considered to be crimes in the ambit of the way people operate in that area. So people don't have access to justice, and access to justice, I mean access to formal justice. Now what is that doing?
Just to jump in here for a second, the jirga, for example, most people feel that it actually works better than the court system because the courts are so slow. It takes years and years and years for anything to be heard, and so there's this, if you like, there's this opinion from Sindh anyway, that the jirga works better.
Not everybody feels that. It's only the landed feudal classes that feel that, because they are the ones who have a hold on the jirgas, and they are the ones who are dispensing so-called justice to the jirgas. Ordinary people don't feel so at all. They would like to have access to courts if they could.
But courts that work, courts that actually move at a pace which keeps pace with the lives of the people who are trying to arrive at some settlement of their issues and their problems.
Because the court system, the courts here, it takes 20 years for something to be resolved. And frankly, in a murder case or something, I mean, you're in the police, you can tell us, it's forever.
But there are lots of minor issues also that come into play in these jirgas. It's not just murder cases.
Actually, jirga system has been there for ages in this part of the world. But it is never a replacement for the formal criminal justice system, and it should not be as a replacement of or a substitute for the formal criminal justice system, because the state has to fulfill its responsibility to the people, and by sanctioning it, by allowing it, or by this to happen, I think you are weakening the criminal justice system, which is not good for any society. It may and then you have the jirga system, like you have that very infamous incident in which the jirga allowed that Mukhtara Mai to be raped. Now, is that any reflection on the jirga system? Now, how can you say that it's very
or
fair
on any
and fast?
System, frankly.
Or on any system for that matter. Now, it can't be a replacement or fair trial. Is it a fair thing? It's not. So, and then there are many other cases like that. We had one jirga in which the child brides were allowed by the jirga in Miyawali. Yeah, 3-year-old girl. Now, what type of system are we talking about? It cannot be, and it should not be. I think the state has a certain responsibility, and we should try and...
But is the state fulfilling that responsibility?
That is a different issue altogether. That's a different issue altogether, whether it's fulfilling that responsibility or not. But what I'm saying is that it cannot be a replacement for the formal system. Yeah, if there are faults or weaknesses in the formal system, in the criminal justice system, we should try and identify those causes or the weaknesses, and then try to overcome those weaknesses, rather than say that, okay, this is not working, so let's go to the jirga system and try to strengthen that. I think by what Simi has said, and very rightly, that you are strengthening the hold of the feudals over the people, which is, I think, not what a civil society would want, what the people would want.